All right, everybody, it is the top of the hour, so I would like to welcome you to tonight's Citizens Climate University. This is a weekly webinar program of Citizens Climate Lobby that provides CCL supporters, so all of you, with access to in-depth training opportunities on topics relating to climate change and effective climate advocacy. This week's essential topic is understanding conservative perspectives about the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm your host. My name's Sabrina Butcher. I'm CCL's Action and Endorsement Coordinator. Thank you again so much for joining us. And tonight's guest speakers are Drew Eyerly, CCL's Conservative Outreach Director, and Nate Abercrombie, CCL's Conservative Outreach Coordinator. So I will go ahead and let the both of you get started.
All right. Thank you, Sabrina. Like Sabrina said, my name's Drew Eyerly. I am the Conservative Outreach Director. Been with CCL since 2016, and the last 2 years as we're coming up on 2 years, year and a half now, as the Outreach Director. Originally from very, very, very rural Pennsylvania. Currently, I'm down in Augusta, Georgia. So we're here to talk tonight about the conservative perspectives around the IRA, how some conservatives feel about it, things they like, things they don't like, ways to talk to conservatives about the IRA, and the benefits that come with it, while also acknowledging maybe some of the things that they don't like. If any of you have been in any of my presentations before, I do not like formalities. I don't want to talk at you for the next 30 minutes. I think we all kind of benefit a lot more when we have a discussion-based approach. So, the slides are just kind of here to guide us. Nate worked extremely hard on them, and I'm, very, very grateful for the time and effort he put into them. But we're both under the same understanding that these are really here just to kind of guide the conversation. So at any time that you have questions, comments, concerns, perspective, please feel free to go ahead and throw your hand up, and we'll stop, pause, and we will talk about it for a little while. We only get through 3 slides. That is fine. I would much rather have conversations and you guys throw stuff at us. So I'll come way better for it. So moving on. Very first section that we are going to cover is general advice for conservatives about the Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA. I will cover that point. How do we talk about it? What's the best way to approach this without putting people on the defensive or giving them places to kind of argue back and try to discredit and undermine whatever you're happy about. Section 2, Nate's going to take over. He's going to talk about how conservatives feel about the provisions and details within the IRA. Because there are bipartisan parts, or not, I don't even call it bipartisan. There are nonpartisan portions of the IRA, such as like the nuclear, tax credits for farming, things like that conservatives really can get behind, as long as you sell it in the pieces and we don't talk about it as a complete package. The fact that it's a Democrat-only bill is enough to turn a conservative away. So if we just talk about certain portions, which we'll get into further, a little bit deeper here in a little while, you have a much more productive conversation. And then finally, we'll close up, we'll do Q&A and discussion. But again, I just want to reiterate, if you have questions and you want to talk about some stuff throughout, please feel free to throw your hand up. Nate, Sabrina, if you can watch for all that. If somebody does have a question they want to drop in the chat, they want to throw their hand up and just ask it to me directly or to Nate directly, I highly, highly, highly encourage it. Okay, next slide. All right, so why are we doing this training? This is the largest climate bill passed in US and world history. It's extremely important. It is a huge talking point. A lot of people are calling it the watered down Build Back America. There's a lot of stuff in this that some people are extremely happy about, some people are not so happy about, and the fact that it's the kind of like the focal point right now to what we're trying to do with CCL in promoting climate action. We need to have a good solid understanding of what people like, what people might not like, and how to have productive conversations around it. moving on to our next bullet, same thing. You should know how to discuss this. With it being as finicky as it is, you can either have a very productive conversation or you could turn somebody off completely. It just really depends. And then this training should help you navigate a lot of those interactions that you're going to have with people while you're out here advocating for it. Next slide. And go ahead. Next slide. All right. So if any of you have seen the op-ed that I worked with Charlotte on that kind of went out, the big upfront point was the bill passed, the money's there. A lot of people want to argue about, oh, the X amount of dollars got allocated. I myself am a very fiscal conservative. I don't like federal spending, but you know what? If it happens, it happens. When we up at staff kind of started talking about all of this, the reference that I used was, think of it like COVID. The COVID stimulus checks. We didn't want us, the type of conservative I am, we didn't want all that money getting dumped into the economy like that. We didn't want the federal support. We didn't want the federal spending, but it happened and there's nothing that we could do about it. So make the most of that money. Instead of talking about how much money the government was handing out, we started talking about what we could do with that money to support, small businesses and things like that. So into our second point, it's better to focus on what can be done with the situation now, rather than talk to them about where the money come from, or talk to them about how much money is coming. What can you do with this bill? How can you ensure that the money that's coming is allocated for the right reasons? Whether it's dumping money into farming, into infrastructure, or more conservative aspects like nuclear. Instead of trying to sell them that getting money is a good thing, sell them on what they can do with that money is a good thing. So we don't need to sell them on the entire bill. There are parts of that I absolutely hate. I'm not going to lie to you guys. There are parts of this package that me as a Republican, I just cannot get behind. Not even as a Republican, just as Drew Eyerly, in my values and my morals. But there's parts that I absolutely love, like the nuclear. So managing our expectations for the conversation, right? If we try to talk to them about the bill in whole, you're offering up a lot of places where they have the ability to debate based on their own expectations and morals and values. So just talk to the parts that are, that conservatives care about, the farming, the energy infrastructure, the developing the nuclear technologies, different tax credits and things like that. And then, because we are Citizens Climate Lobby, focus on those climate provisions. Talk about what you know. Talk about what you're very well versed in and why it is a good nonpartisan step forward. Because when we start talking about the IRA is good, they're going to go into everything but climate, all these other areas, and conservatives are going to argue back. As far as excessive spending and things like that go. So, all right, Sabrina, next slide. All right, you want climate action, but not the IRA. Again, I will be honest with you, this is kind of the wheelhouse that I fell into. I will support the IRA, or I do support the IRA, because it's a step forward and progress is progress. I wish it would have happened differently, but it didn't. So I really fall into this, being open and honest with everybody here. I'm a conservative and I support climate action, but I'm not the biggest fan of the IRA. So with talking to other conservatives that are like me, I've had to think about the argument that resounds with me. Why are we here? Why do I feel this way? Well, it's because conservatives didn't step up. Republicans didn't step up. We've had the opportunity to talk. We've had the opportunity to come to the table. And then this happened without conservative input. And coming into the second bullet, this is what happens when we let one side, I don't want to say Democrats, because it could be for any issue, and I don't want to play partisan politics here, but when one side dominates an issue, this is what happens. You need both sides to talk. So when you're talking to a Republican who absolutely hates the IRA, yeah, I want to do climate stuff, but I just can't get behind this. Well, then you need to, advocate. This is why you need to contact your congressman. This is why you need to talk to your representatives and make your voice heard, that you want Republicans to weigh in on issues that, socially may be more left leaning, or, if on a different topic, maybe more right leaning. It's important to Mark Friedman. What are your main objections to the IRA? We'll talk about that later. That's more of a personal thing, sir. I will drop, if you can have my email and my phone number, and I would be glad to talk to you about that stuff offline if you'd like to have a personal conversation around that. I put my own perspective on here to kind of give you all you're going to face people such as myself. They're like, no, I don't like the IRA. And I'm going to be honest with you all. I support it, because it is climate action and we're going the right way with it. I just think we could have done it better had Republicans, spoken up and talked. Had Republicans, come forward with, a lot of these free market approaches and things that we had, where we're not just throwing money at issues that, basically ride on the back of the taxpayer. So you come across somebody like me, but who's a little bit more stubborn and closed-minded, these are the arguments that you're going to get back. So talking to those people again, yeah, there we go. Thank you, Nate. So talking to people such as myself, let them know, all right, well, that's great that you support climate action. I understand, show compassion, show that you can agree, show that, you understand where they are coming from. We all want to hear our words coming out of somebody else's mouth. That's just human nature. So relate with them. Yeah, I understand this could have been done better. And here's my idea of how it could have done better. You could have, we can encourage more Republicans to get involved so that we have more balanced solutions coming forward. I support the IRA because, it's progress on an issue that I care about, regardless. But had we had Republicans on there, we could have probably done this in a way that appeased way more people. All right, aspects of the IRA to avoid. Funding for 87,000 new IRS agents. I cannot tell you how many memes that I have seen on Facebook where we would like 87,000 school security officers, not IRS agents. Reading a lot of stuff on this just today. There's so much propaganda out there around that, and how, hiring these agents, the fact of the matter is, and I'll be honest, the fact of the matter is hiring these IRS agents allows the America to do the audits that it needs to do. With, we've had so many budget cuts and everything that, people can get away with tax evasion all the time. They're not paying their fair share. And then we don't have the money, which, to fund programs that we need to fund. But when you look at it superficially, which a lot of the right are going to, because it's not something that they care about, they just get mad. Like, you're just looking at people who are going to come after my money. So stay away from talking about that. It's not a good thing on the right side for most people. The corporate minimum tax rate, we're free market, we're capitalism. So having like a minimum tax that corporations have to pay and things like that, it looks like, you're hurting somebody for their hard work. And the Affordable Care Act subsidy extension. Again, I will talk from my perspective. I hate all subsidies. I don't think the government should be involved in subsidizing stuff that's not free market, to include fuel. So don't shoot me yet. I don't think we should be subsidizing fuel either. If you want to use gas to run your car, you should be paying the true $10 to $15 per gallon. So when we start talking subsidies, people are going to get upset and they're going to get very defensive, because you're taking my money from me and choosing where to spend it. And that's a horrible, horrible thing. I should be able to decide where that money goes. Next slide. Okay, so the IRA will benefit red states. There is a lot of stuff within this bill that considers, the rural aspect of America. So 2/3 of renewable investment construction occurs in our red states. So, it's solar, it's wind, it's stuff like that. There's the job opportunities there. Our red states are kind of prime real estate for renewable investment. So talking about that, talk to them from that angle, that perspective. Moving on to our second bullet, mining and manufacturing of renewables. Okay, mining and manufacturing of the renewable materials more likely to happen there as well. All right, Nate, I'm gonna let you take this one now.
Yeah, sure. So this is where I chime in. So I just want to start off by saying that the Inflation Reduction Act is a huge bill. I think it's like 1,400 pages. I haven't read it. I don't know if any of you have read it. I doubt any of you have read it, but so I'm all that to say I'm not an expert on the specifics. It's very technical and it goes beyond what most people care to understand or can understand. It's extremely tricky stuff. So what I'm going to be talking about here is one, not the entire bill by any stretch of the imagination. This is going to be about the provisions or the aspects of it that are probably most likely to come up in conversation with a conservative and maybe what you should say about them. And it's also going to contain a couple slides on the aspects of the bill which conservatives might either like or find least objectionable. So to that end, one of the things that you should just know going into a discussion about the bill in general, conservative or not, is the impacts it'll have on the deficit, the national debt, and inflation. So first off, by the way, that little picture on the left, our national debt, it says 11 trillion right there. I think it's coming up on 30 trillion now. So that's a little bit of an outdated photo. But the IRA is going to reduce the deficit by about $100 billion. And that is of a federal deficit that we're currently running, which I think is close to 1.3 trillion. So a little bit under 10%. And there was a question asked earlier about whether or not calling it the IRA is a misnomer. And I would say definitively, yes, it is, because it is believed that the IRA will have a negligible effect on inflation. And what that means is experts disagree on whether or not it will either raise inflation by about 0.1% or reduce it by about 0.1%. So I would chalk up the name of the bill to a creative piece of political theater. Next slide. Oh, and actually, sorry, and just one more thing about this, but and so just to know about the negligible effects on inflation and the reduction of the deficit, that these are two things that are accomplished by something that Drew mentioned earlier, which is the minimum tax rate and new IRS agents who are going to try to collect money that was missed out on from wealthy individuals. And so conservatives, a lot of people might not like essentially how the money is raised to sponsor this. Next slide. So really what I think is most likely to come up in a conversation with a conservative is the aspects of the bill that are climate related that are maybe okay or interesting to talk about are the tax credits and the tax rebates that are just littered throughout it. So we'll get into this a little bit. Next slide. So broadly, there are a few sets of tax credits that are being applied on businesses. First off, the manufacturing production tax credit will allow us to onshore domestic production and mining. It's essentially a credit to allow people to it's essentially a credit to allow companies to build new facilities in the US and bring the manufacturing back over here, manufacturing which had gone overseas, but the tide of which has sort of swung with supply chain issues resulting from COVID. And this will also apply, by the way, to allowing us to domestically mine certain critical minerals such as like lithium and cobalt, which are absolutely crucial for the production of solar panels and battery technology. There's also a technology R&D credit that is offered for instance, like what Drew mentioned earlier, small nuclear reactors that'll apply to those. Things that are still in the emerging tech phase will be much more easily written off as one of the provisions in this bill. And lastly, another form of tax credit that applies to businesses is things like facilities upgrades, whether that's, energy efficiency through getting, better light bulbs, or insulating buildings to things like rooftop solar. Businesses will be able to get credit for those sorts of upgrades. Next slide. And then there's also a more personal aspect to the credits and rebates that are in this bill. One of the ones that I've heard talked about most by CCL volunteers is, money that can be used or that can come in the form of a rebate for purchasing of electric vehicles. That will be $7,500 for new vehicles, $3,500 for used ones. But there is a very interesting asterisk next to this that I think you should be aware of, and it is at a certain value added percentage of the vehicle will have to come from the US. So I don't know the exact figure, but it's a solid majority of the value of the vehicle will have to come from it having been built in the US. And that means the battery will have to be mined from the US. A lot of the production will have to be here. And what that means is right now, there are only a handful of cars, I think 3 EVs that immediately qualify for this. And it's going to take a couple years before companies like Tesla will be able to sell their cars and have this credit applied to them. I think the Chevy Bolt, off the top of my head, is one of the only ones that actually receives this credit. Another thing, $1,200 for qualified energy efficiency improvements. So this gets broken down into a much more complicated, smaller minutia. It's like you can get $600 for upgrading your windows and like $400 for getting like better drying machine, like that sort of thing. And then there's also a 30% rebate for installing energy generating improvements, which essentially just means for almost all people, solar rooftop, that sort of thing. So all this to say, like, did you say something?
No, go ahead. But when you're done with this, I want to jump in real quick.
I was just going to kind of contextualize this for the average conservative. If you want to go ahead, if that's where you were taking it.
Yeah. So kind of want to give you guys a little personal story here real quick. Can anybody tell me what the monthly increase on your energy bill is driving an EV? Anybody know off the top of their head the average? I just found this out like 4 or 5 weeks ago when I was talking to the girlfriend trying to sell her on buying a Tesla. All right, it's like $25 to $50 a month. I currently drive a 2021 Toyota Tundra, and I love my truck. Absolutely love my truck. I probably spend like $300 just in gas, just alone. It does not do well. It's horrible. Thankfully I work from home and I don't have to drive that much, but it's absolute trash. When you start talking about impacts to the wallet, conservatives are gonna pay attention. And there's this a lot of propaganda out there right now around I'm gonna have to get a generator. I'm gonna have to wait 4 hours at the pump or at the charging station and blah, 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 and all these other things. Not if you pay attention. And it's, for at least for my area right now under Georgia with, credits and everything else, it comes out to, charging your electric vehicle and only driving it from home is $25 to $50 a month. I can save $250 to $350 a month by buying an EV, by getting that Tesla or a Chevy Bolt or something else.
Or if you want to pick your truck, you could wait for that EV Silverado or Lightning.
There we go. We get that Lightning. And I'm not against it at all. And we started having these conversations, and like she's a libertarian, so she was like anti everything government. And then she started looking at this stuff. She's like, you know what? Maybe we need to go look at the Tesla. And I'm like, yeah, park the truck, just keep it from when we go to deer camp. We're good. We run the truck everywhere else. It depends on how much you drive. Use it as your everyday commuter. But again, not to go off the rails on why EVs are such a good thing. We all know that here. But when we start talking the economics of it, what can you save in your wallet? When I heard that I could save anywhere between $250 to $350, $350 a month by not having to buy gas and, run this around. When she heard that, she's like, absolutely. We definitely need to go and, start looking at this. Extremely good talking point. When I say you got to spend an extra $50 on your energy bill, but you save this much on buying fossil fuels.
So you've already heard Drew mention this. He absolutely loves this. I do too, but he's just beaming. So one of the provisions in this bill that conservatives are most likely to be happy about, as far as just direct spending goes, and how that money is being used, is what will happen to boost nuclear energy output as a result of this. There's a production tax credit for existing reactors. I think it's like $15 per megawatt hour. And this is really helpful because nuclear is actually one of the most expensive forms of energy that we currently use. And which is quite unfortunate given, that it's a fantastic baseload power and does not emit carbon at all. Other aspects relating to nuclear there in the bill, there is a 30% investment tax for new deployment, which is similar to the, other 30% rebates that you could get for, installing like solar, that sort of thing. And so that will hopefully incentivize and bring down production costs for new plants come online. And then there's also something to the tune of $1 billion that will be used for the U.S. to acquire highly enriched uranium. Next slide. And lastly, just a couple other things that are worth potentially mentioning in a conversation with a conservative. Number one, the headline thing, the thing that everyone is pretty stoked about, is the 40% reduction in emissions from 2005 levels by 2030. That's a little bit of a round, and there is debate over whether or not that number is closer to 38 or 45%. Some other things that are important to bring up, but by curbing our reliance on fossil fuels, we're going to burn a lot less gas, and that alone will save the U.S. public billions of dollars in public health costs over the coming decades. Further, you can, by 2030, with the new cheap forms of power that will be coming online, especially solar, it's estimated that most Americans will save an estimated $170 to $220 per month on their energy bill. And there are programs in this to benefit farmers. I think is it aspects of the, Drew, you might know this better than me, provisions in there that allow for what's it called? Planting two crops at once, or not two crops at once, but regenerative ag. Anyways,
no-till farming, regenerative agriculture. So
yeah. And then, of course, with all of this investment and the money going into the community, we'd hope there'd at least be some more jobs. So,
thank you for listening to this episode of Citizens Climate Lobby's training program. You can tune into more episodes anywhere podcasts are available. Inspired by what you heard today? Join Citizens Climate Lobby to advocate for bipartisan climate solutions. Go to community.citizensclimate.org to find more trainings, resources, your local chapter, national action teams, discussion forums, and more. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @CitizensClimate. We also invite all of our listeners to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiration.
Like what you hear? Recommend us to your friends and make sure to give us a 5-star rating. It helps us show up on other listeners' feeds. Feel free to pass on any suggestions for future episodes in the comments as well.
And together, we are creating the political will for a livable world.